without further ado, Dr. Nadia Zeldes of the Center for the Study of Conversion and Interreligious Encounters, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, it is not really my topic. I have to give this little warning. It's 12th century Sicily, and it's a multicultural encounter that we'll try to discuss and interpret later in my lecture. So this is a generalized map of Sicily. I'll show you the geographical positions. This is the Norman Kingdom of Sicily. I think it's Sicily at its height in mid-12th century, when it ruled also parts of North Africa and southern Italy. So you can see why kings of Sicily, Norman kings of Sicily, considered themselves like emperors in a way. And well, maybe it was a little presumptuous, but that's how they presented themselves. Now, this is what we are going to talk about today. The beautiful tombstone you are seeing there was raised in memory of Anna, mother of the priest Grisandus, a member of the royal court of Roger II of Sicily. The tombstone inscriptions were executed in 1149, at a time when King Roger, as I said, was at the peak of his power. In 1130, Roger was crowned King of Sicily, and by the time the tombstone was erected, his rule was extended to southern Italy and parts of the coastal area of North Africa. Areas mentioned in both Arabic and the Judeo-Arabic inscriptions. The tombstone was discovered in Palermo at the place of the Church of San Michael the Archangel, now situated within the complex of the Biblioteca Comunale, the city library in Palermo. The tombstone is among the exhibits housed nowadays in the Zissa Museum on the outskirts of Palermo. Before discussing the tombstone and its inscriptions, I would like to briefly review the historical background. During the 7th century, after a series of wars between the Vandals and the Byzantine Empire, Sicily and Calabria, southern Italy, became a province, theme, of the Byzantine Empire. Formerly, Sicily still belonged to the Church of Rome. The papacy owned land and exercised its authority even during the rule of Byzantium. But in time, large parts of the local population were drawn to the Byzantine rite, and by the 8th century, most of the island's inhabitants were speaking Greek, including the Jews. Jewish presence in Sicily is recorded from late antiquity, as attested to by tombstones bearing Greek and Hebrew inscriptions, the earliest dating from the 4th century. The Jews of Sicily are also mentioned in letters written by Pope Gregory the Great, 590-604. Between the 9th and 10th centuries, Sicily was conquered by Muslim armies coming from North Africa, and it was a long process that took almost 100 years. Both Greek-speaking Christians and Jews continued to live under Muslim rule. The Muslim conquest encouraged close ties between Sicily and the rest of the Arabic-speaking Mediterranean world. Muslim and Jewish immigrants from North Africa, Egypt, Syria, and Muslim Spain came to settle in Sicily. Arabic became the common language of all the island's inhabitants. Most of our information about the Jewish population in this period is derived from letters preserved in the Cairo Geniza, and thus mainly reflects the later period of Muslim rule, that is, the late 10th and 11th centuries. The majority of the letters are written in Judeo-Arabic. Muslim rule ended around 1090, when Sicily was conquered by Christian armies led by knights of Norman descent. These were the sons and grandsons of warriors from Normandy who settled in southern Italy and intermarried with the local nobility. The Norman army was relatively small, and it probably did not exceed a few thousand soldiers. The conquest was therefore a lengthy process, and the Normans would not have succeeded without the help of local Greeks and some of the Muslim lords. Already before the conquest was complete, Greek administrators were responsible for the reorganization of land, delimiting boundaries, and registering populations. The Normans needed the Greeks as intermediaries between the small Latin and Romance-speaking ruling elite and the conquered population. The fact that the Greeks were Christians, albeit of a different rite, facilitated their acceptance into the ruling elites. Greek used to be the primary language in the early years of the normal royal administration, while Latin played only a minor part. Arabic regained its importance during King Roger's reign, probably prompted by the strengthening relations with Fatimid Egypt. The conquerors could not, and perhaps did not even wish to convert the local population to Christianity. Their small number and other considerations dictated a policy of tolerance, and in some cases, an inverted application of the Islamic dhimmi laws. Thus, both Jews and Muslims, and perhaps also Christians of the Greek Rite, paid the poll tax, the jizya. The Jews, by the way, continued to pay the jizya until their expulsion in 1492. The Latins became the ruling elite, but Muslims, Jews, and Greeks were permitted freedom of worship and enjoyed official recognition of their religious legal systems. In addition to that, each group was permitted to engage the services of notaries who wrote in their respective languages. Judeo-Arabic was therefore recognized as one of the languages of the kingdom. This unusual linguistic identity of what was, after all, a European Jewish community caused Henri Bresque, a leading scholar of Sicilian history, to describe the Jews of Sicily as Arabes de langue, Juifs de religion. But while this may have been true for the Norman period, it was considerably less so in the last 2 centuries of Jewish presence in Sicily. By that time, immigration from the Iberian Peninsula, Provence, Crete, and other non-Arabic speaking lands changed the demographic picture, and thus the use of Arabic was limited to the older segments of the Jewish population. It is interesting to note that although there are several examples for official recognition of Judeo-Arabic, it is never mentioned explicitly in Sicilian documentation. It is usually referred to either as Hebrew or the language of the Jews, and rarely as Arabic. However, the continuing use of Judeo-Arabic is attested to by a number of surviving documents, such as a 12th century deed of sale regarding the cemetery of Siracusa, several ketubot, marriage contracts, stone inscriptions, a dirge, and others. All of these incorporate words and terms derived from the Sicilian dialect, which belongs to the Romance family of languages. I stress the linguistic aspect because of its relevance to the tombstone's 4 inscriptions. Now, interpreting the religious and cultural policies of the Norman kings of Sicily was and still is a source of fierce debate between scholars. In the 19th century, close to the struggle to unify Italy, certain scholars brought medieval Sicily as an example for cultural and religious tolerance and coexistence. In mid-19th century, the Sicilian Isidoro La Lumia used the term convivevano, long before Americo Castro coined his convivencia regarding medieval Spain. Romantic views of a tolerant medieval Sicily persisted at least until the mid-20th century. Later, the economic model depicting the conquest of Sicily as a war conducted by land-hungry knights of little religious conviction was offered by Roberto Sabatino Lopez and others. But already Karl Erdmann, in his Origins of the Idea of Crusade, originally published in 1935, drew attention to the religious fervor of the conquerors, the visions of the cross and saints that appear in the conquest chronicles, for example, St. George appearing to the assembled warriors before the Battle of Cerami, 1063, the conversionist policy towards leading figures of the Muslim elite, and so on. According to this view, the conquest of Sicily is perceived as a proto-crusade to be compared with the Reconquista that took place around the same time in the Iberian Peninsula. This debate, this scholarly debate, is also relevant to the interpretation of the quadrilingual inscription, as we shall see presently. Another consideration of Norman religious policies focuses on the ultimate political aims beyond pragmatic considerations. After all, the relative religious tolerance and recognition of the various languages spoken by the kingdom's ethnic communities were derived from an imperial ideology promoted by the royal court. This is just a different aspect. The Norman dynasty, so it is argued, sought to instill loyalty to the crown while conserving the multicultural aspects of the kingdom. Perhaps it is the author of the anonymous chronicle attributed to Hugo Falcandus, written towards the end of the 12th century, who provides the best explanation of all. I'll not read it in Latin, but in translation he, King Roger II, inquired with great diligence after the customs of other kings and people, and whatever he saw in them as most beautiful or useful he took unto himself. Or, as David Abulafia put it, Roger's aim, ultimately, was to manage to be a recognizably Western-style king to his Latin subjects, a Byzantine-style Basileus to his Greek subjects, a sultan to his Muslim subjects. This ideology, or ideal, is reflected in a rhymed and illustrated work composed by Pietro de Eboli, a member of the royal administration in the early 13th century. Palermo, the capital city, here is why I want to show you. No. Oops. Yeah. Can you see the images?
Maybe if we put it full screen.
Yeah, I'll try to put it on the screen. Where is it? Yeah. Better?
Yeah, a bit.
Okay. Palermo, the capital city, is described here as Urbs Felix dotata populo trilingui, a happy city gifted by trilingual people. The illustration shows the quarters of the city. Oh no, it's not this one. Here is the people of Palermo mourning the death of King William II. But you can see in the lower part of the picture the different people living in Palermo. And in a second I'll show you another picture, even more explicit. On the top part you can see the Muslim doctor taking care of the king and an astrologer taking care of the king and so on. Both are Muslims, by the way. These are all the notaries of the royal administration. You can see by their clothes, they're different. These are the Greeks. You can see with the beards, the Saracens with the turbans, and the Latins shaved, the shaved faces. Now this is very interesting. Can you distinguish all the figures here? These are like, they are in fact 4 communities. It is my suspicion that this community on the left, these are probably the Jews. Because, which one? This one. This one. I don't know how clear it is. Maybe you can see that they have long noses, and some of them are clean-shaven, others are not clean-shaven. I'll digress just a little bit. Much later in the times of Frederick II, he orders that all Jews of the kingdom should wear a beard, which in my opinion means that they didn't always wear a beard. So if you had to order it, it might be that they didn't usually do it. So this might indicate that these are the Jews. Anyway, some of them are Saracens, clearly. Others are the ones here. These are clearly Saracens. Others are Latins and Greeks. And this is part of the configuration of this imperial ideology of a multicultural kingdom. However, the figurative illustration of this ideal of coexistence dates in fact from the end of the Golden Period, or represents his swan song, as it relates the death without heir of William II in 1189, the last Norman king. The author Pietro de Eboli was in fact an official serving the next ruler of Sicily, Frederick II, the grandson of King Roger II, but also Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. As much as Frederick may have wanted his reign to be a continuity of the Norman era, under his rule there were significant changes in the status of the Jews, and he was the engineer of the expulsion of the Muslims from Sicily. Now, after looking at all these happy things, we'll see... איך אני חוזרת אחורה?
גלגלים מה? בסדר. יכול עוד לעלות.
Okay, we'll go back to the tombstone. Here's the tombstone. Maybe I'll try to... Can you see it well enough? No, I'll try to put it like this. Yeah. Okay. Now let's take a good look at the tombstone. The upper inscription is written in Judeo-Arabic, and it is the only surviving text in Judeo-Arabic of non-Jewish provenance. On the left, the inscription is in Latin, and on the right, in Greek. The lower part of the inscription is in Arabic, written in Arabic characters. Both Arabic inscriptions, the upper and lower, are also the longest, and it is possible that for that reason they are located as they are to allow for the length of the text. All four inscriptions frame a Byzantine cross. The letters inserted between its arms are an abbreviation for the Greek formula Jesus Christos Nika, Jesus the Savior wins. The colored geometric inlays are characteristic of Sicilian art in this period, known as Roman Arabic style. The same style was used for churches, such Norman churches, such as the Cappella Palatina, the Martorana Church, the Zisa Palace, and more. Unfortunately, all information regarding the erection of the tombstone and its placement comes from the inscriptions themselves, and very little is known from other sources. Therefore, an analysis of the form and contents of the four inscriptions provides the only clues. A quick glance reveals that the two Arabic inscriptions are considerably longer, as I said, the Greek ones and longer the Latin and Greek ones, and both provide information on the titles of the king, the territories under his rule, and the New Testament figures of Anna and Maria. Okay, this is the Judeo-Arabic inscription, and I owe my thanks to Moshe, who helped me translate the inscription. I'll read the translation. On the Anna died Anna, the mother of the priest Acrisant, priest of the sublime king, the lord of Italy, Nachbada. Now, this is a word that so far no scholar has been able to interpret. Some say it refers to Lombardy, but it's unclear what it means. It's clearly a territory, but we don't know which one exactly. And it appears the same way also in the Arabic inscription. Calabria, Sicily, and Africa. Anna died at the time of the afternoon prayers on Friday, on 20th August, the year 4908, which is 1148 according to the Christian Christian calendar, and was buried in the Great Mosque. That is a bit funny. It means, of course, the Great Church. From there, her son transported her with prayers to this church of St. Michael during the first hour of Friday, the 20th of May of the year 4909. That is 1149. And he built this church over her tomb and named it the Church of St. Anne, after the name of the mother of Lady Mary, the mother of the Messiah. Thus God may have mercy on him who reads this, and pray for her mercy. Amen and amen. This is the Latin inscription. On the 13th day, before the calends of September, this is a calculation goes backward. I won't tire you with how it is done. It means August 20. Anna, the mother of Grisandus, has died and was buried in the great church of St. Mary in the year 1148, the 11th indiction. And on the 13th calends, again, you have to calculate backward, 13th calends of June, that is May 20, she was transported to that chapel which her son erected for the Lord and for himself in the year 1149, the 12th indiction. The calends calculation dates from Roman times. The indiction is a system that was enacted, say, in 313, and it is a 15-year cycle that goes on from that date onwards, and was used in various parts of Western Europe. In Sicily it was used until early modern times. The Greek inscription now. Anna died peacefully on the 20th of the month of August in the year 6656, that is, of course, 1148, and she was buried in the Catholic and Great Church in the year 6657, that is 1149. Yet, on the 20th of May, 6657, her son Chrysanthos raised her. He gathered Greek and Latin priests and translated her relics with, now this is a word that is much in dispute between scholars, if it was a procession or prayers, litania in Greek. He reburied her in this place where he had built his chapel above her relics. Pray for her. Now comes the Arabic inscription, and again I have to thank Moshe for this. Anna, the mother of the priest Acrisant, can you see it?
Yeah.
No, okay. Anna, the mother of the priest Acrisant, priest of the ruling majesty, the august, the supreme, the sublime, the elevated, the most holy, the magnificent, the powerful through God, the potent through his omnipotence. It was a bit awkward. The mighty through his strength, the ruler of Italy. Again, this Nakbada, which we don't know what it is exactly, which territory it is, Calabria, Sicily, and Africa, and the defender of the Pope of Rome, the protector of the Christian faith. May God prolong his reign. Died, Anna, of course, died on Friday at the time of the evening prayers on 20 August 543 to the Hijrah, of course, 1148, and was buried in the great church. From there, her son solemnly transferred her with prayers of intercession to this church of St. Michael on Friday at the first hour of the evening of 20 of May of the year 544 to the Hijrah, 1149 according to Anno Domini. And he built this church or chapel over her tomb and named it the Church of St. Anne under the name of Anne, mother of Our Lady Mary, the mother of the Messiah. May God have mercy on him who reads this and pray for her mercy. Amen, amen, amen. Now, one of the more noticeable differences between the texts is, of course, the dating. The Judeo-Arabic inscription gives the date of Anna's death and the erection of the tombstone according to the Jewish calendar. The month, August, and then May, is according to the common use in Christian Europe. But here I must digress. Italian and Sicilian Jews almost always use the Latin name of the month, so this is in accordance to that usage. It's no wonder they use August and May and so on. The Latin inscription gives the year of the incarnation and the year of the indiction. The indiction, as I said, refers to the 15-year cycle. The day of the month, however, is calculated according to the Roman calendar. In the Greek inscription, the years are the years of the creation of the world according to Greek Orthodox tradition. And the Arabic, of course, is the Hejira year and the following Hejira year. While the Latin inscription is very succinct, the Greek adds that Anna died peacefully in her sleep and mentions a procession or prayers arranged by Grisandos for the removal of her remains from the first burial place to the Church of St. Michael. Both Arabic inscriptions list King Roger's titles, which are not mentioned in the Greek and Latin versions, and explain that the chapel was dedicated to Saint Anne, Mother of Mary, the Mother of the Messiah. All four inscriptions relate the death of Anna on the 20th of August, 1148, specifying that her body was first buried in the great church, probably the Cathedral of Palermo. Later, Grisandos built a chapel in her honor, and Anna's body was transferred to this chapel on the 20th of May, 1149, in a ceremony conducted by the cleric Grisandos with Greek and Latin priests, either, as we said, in a procession or with prayers. Scholars greatly differ in their interpretations regarding the purpose of the quadrilingual inscriptions. Some argue that the four languages reflect the normal royal inclusive ideology, best exemplified in Peter of Eboli's The Rebus Siculis Carmen, which I showed you the illustrations earlier, the rhymed and illustrated history of Norman Sicily. Since Roger II portrayed himself as a ruler of a multicultural realm, the tombstone created by Courtier faithfully reflects that reality, namely that the different speaking communities belong to one people. In the same vein, the reference to Greek and Latin prayers in the text is interpreted as an attempt to unify Greek and Latin rites. Other scholars, however, point out the inherently Christian message of the four inscriptions and the fact that Arabic and Judeo-Arabic versions offer a detailed explanation for the role of St. Anna in Christian tradition. Why it was so important to do that? Finally, they argue the central motif of the cross and abbreviations surrounding it. Here it is. Can you see? Maybe. Yeah. Okay. The abbreviations announcing the victory of Christ are significant as they prove that the inscriptions were intended as a missionary message. According to this view, the multicultural texts affirm the Christian identity of the kingdom and address new converts from Judaism and Islam. There is even a suggestion that Anna, mother of Chrysanthus, was perhaps a Christian convert from Judaism. Although the quadrilingual inscription is unique, the Norman administration and its officials produced various bilingual and trilingual artifacts, coins, textiles, and in particular embroidered silk garments and documents. An interesting example for the contemporary use of trilingual texts is a psalter dating from circa 1130 to 1155, now found in the London British Library. Here you can see it. The psalms, as you can see, are arranged in 3 columns per folio, the Greek text being placed on the left, the Latin in the center, and the Arabic on the right. Interestingly, in this case, the Arabic is translated from the Greek. Several trilingual inscriptions using Latin, Greek, and Arabic are known to have dated from Roger II's reign. One such example is the surviving description of a water hourglass created for King Roger in 1142. Like the quadrilingual inscription, like the quadrilingual tombstone, it had inscriptions in 3 languages, each referring to a different calendar in order to denote the date. Unfortunately, a picture or an image of this clock did not survive, but we have the description. There is no doubt that Norman Sicily acknowledged the religious and cultural identity of each one of the groups forming the kingdom's population. But was there any ideology or purpose lying beyond the multilingual efforts? In most cases, the bilingual or trilingual documents, coins, and artifacts were produced for pragmatic reasons, as they were intended to be read and understood by all segments of the population. Or they were rendered in Arabic and Greek so that they could be understood in foreign countries with whom the Sicilian kingdom had diplomatic relations, particularly Fatimid Egypt and Byzantium. But the quadrilingual tombstone was placed in a church. Who was supposed to read the inscriptions? Obviously, first and foremost, Christian worshippers who came to pray in the church. But were some of these Christians converts? We don't know. I would like to draw the attention to the fact that both the Judeo-Arabic and Arabic inscriptions include what we might call religious instruction. They explain who Anna is according to Christian tradition, and they mention Mary, the mother of Jesus. This information is missing from the Latin and Greek inscriptions, probably because the intended readers were familiar with these traditions and had no need for explanation. The central motive of the cross and the declaration Jesus Christ wins is a powerful reminder of the triumph of Christianity. So is, I love this, so is the mantle of Roger II, depicting the triumph of the lion over the camel, symbols of Christian power and Muslim power. Thus, it indicates that the kingdom is indeed multicultural, but reigning supreme is the Christian faith, perhaps a syncretic Byzantine Roman Catholic rite, but Christianity nevertheless. Thank you. Now I open the floor to questions.
Let's one.
Okay, my name is Shmuel Yerushalmi, and I want to ask you next question. If in this period, 12th century, 11th, 12th century, we are know about any evidences, about any facts of suites of oppressions on religion background, alike to oppressions alike to oppressions of Inquisition in 15th century. Because if we speak about religion tolerance, about multicultural tolerance, or we need to know that in this period was to any facts of occupy of mosques by church, by Catholic church, and because I want to ask you to deep in any form on this question. If
I'll try to answer you. It's not I cannot answer it so quickly because there are a lot of studies on Norman Sicily, and I cannot really explain everything now. I'll try to be very brief on this. Yes, as I mentioned, the Conquest Chronicles mention Christian fervor. We know that some mosques were turned into churches, like the Cathedral of Palermo, which I mentioned before, was built instead of the central mosque that existed before in Palermo. On the other hand, we know that the Muslims were allowed to exercise their religion, and it is mentioned in many documents that each community could, as I mentioned it already. We cannot talk about Inquisition in the 12th century. There was no Inquisition in the 12th century, not even the papal one. It was founded much later. So it is outside of our discussion. As for oppression, we don't know explicitly about oppression. The only thing that is relevant appears in a chronicle written towards the end of the 12th century, which says that King Roger, close to his death, tried by all sorts of means to facilitate the conversion of Jews and Muslims by giving them gifts. And even this is interpreted in various ways, and some modern scholars say that it is a later interpolation and might not even reflect historical reality. We just don't know about that, but that's the only significant reference to conversions. On the other hand, yes, I might add one more thing, that we know about some Muslim lords that were converted to Christianity, but we don't know exactly the circumstances. We know nothing about Jews converted to Christianity in the times of Roger II. There might have been, but there's no documentation.
Nadia, do you know anything about circumstances under which this is a Catholic church, correct?
Yes.
So
well, the Catholic Church in Sicily is a bit of a problem. It is a Catholic church, but I'll just, I completely digress. But I found in the material that I worked on, which is much later, we're talking about early 16th century, but I found a description of an image of Our Lady, which is amazing. I mean, it says, I'll give you exactly the words of the description and I'll translate. Una cona di nostra donna alla greca con una vanticona alla morisca, which means an image of Our Lady in the Byzantine style with a frame. In Sicily they used like textile made frames from silk and all sorts of materials in the Moorish style, which is really so you can see that even as late as the 16th century you have this mixture, but yes.
Yeah, so but there is a specific purpose of this tombstone, and you're saying it's for instruction. So what would be good to know, under what circumstances did non-Catholics enter the church? Were people forced to go, perhaps? Have you heard of any instance of this, or were there any other events taking place in the church for which reasons people were going in? Did people go into the church for other reasons, because there was beautiful bling and things to see? Or so that might really help you.
Yeah, I can. Yes.
Why this tombstone was put there with the 4 languages? Because I think you write on the purpose, instruction, but under which circumstances were people exposed to this instruction?
This is a very good.
Inside the building?
Yes.
Inside.
Yes. Inside. It was placed in a chapel.
In the chapel built by this.
Yes.
By herself.
Yes. It was a chapel. You know what a chapel is, inside the church, and
Not
so
something that you can see.
no. The only evidence we have, well, there are several churches built in we might say Byzantine style in Norman Sicily, which means that it was a style adopted by the Catholic rulers of Sicily. What was the purpose is also under debate. If they wanted to emulate the Byzantine emperor, if they wanted to make themselves emperors of Byzantium. You know, these questions are very prevalent in all the studies made on Norman Sicily. What I can quote is the description of Muhammad ibn Jubayr, who visited Sicily in 1189. No, 1187, I think, yes, 1187, before the death of King William. And he says that he came to Palermo, and he and his companions, were clearly Muslims, went to attend midnight mass at the church of Georgios of Antiochia, which is now the Martorana, and they entered the church together with lots of other people, including Muslims, which is very interesting. I'm sure they were not forced to go there. So it shows you how people who are not Christians did go into churches. I don't know about Jews, but this is an evidence about Muslims entering the church.
No, churches seem to be public spaces more than belonging to specific.
That's all I can say. Okay.
There was actually, I think it was Christian women that they were dressed as Muslims.
Yes, but he says also about himself who went into the church with his companions. Yes, yes. Yaniv?
No,
Ora.
He's the boss. First of all, thank you very much for this very beautiful presentation and for bringing this vignette that encapsulates so well our work here. The first thing I would like to say is that we should be aware of making an equation between language and religion. And because language can sometimes represent other things, like the knowledge of those who made it. They want to be proud of the multicultural nature of their place, and especially the Hebrew language, which has its place. But then it's not Hebrew; it is
Judeo-Arabic.
Judeo-Arabic, and what you said about the information about An, which is missing from the Latin and Greek, is very convincing. That they did have Jews and Muslims in mind. So this is what I was thinking about. Can you somehow connect the tombstone to the translation project that is so known in southern Italy and Sicily during Frederick II times and so on? And the second question, which is of interest to me, is St. Michael, that is somehow very prominent in southern Italy, and his place in this story. So,
well, I start with the second question. I have no idea if St. Michael had any special role in this placement of the tombstone and so on. I really don't know, and there is no information about this. As to the first question, the thing...
You know about the place of St. Michael.
Yes, but I cannot connect him in a specific way to this tombstone. I don't know if it was just by chance that they decided to transfer the tombstone or any other reason. We don't know. The whole problem with this tombstone is that we don't know the circumstances beyond what is written here. We know nothing about the persons involved, except that Grisandos appears to be a priest of Greek rite who served at the court of King Roger, and his parents. There is another tombstone that mentions his parents. One of them is Anna, of course, and the other is Drogo. Drogo is a Norman name, so he may have been the result of a kind of mixed marriage between a Norman knight or a Norman courtier and this lady. We don't know what were her origins, okay? Now, about the translation project, it is later.
Yeah.
You're talking about Friedrich II, and the main translation project was done by the Angevins, which is a lot later, and it's a different dynasty, it was a different concept, and it's a completely different world, I might say. So we don't know anything about translation projects in Norman times. All we know is this tendency to write documents in several languages. Now, part of it can be explained. I mean, I agree in general lines that there was an ideology of multiculturalism in Sicily, and maybe we should equate this more with Spain of El Cid or Spain of the Reconquista, which is more or less in the same period, and you have ideas like the emperor of the three religions, for example, in Spain. I think it's Alfonso the Sixth, right? So, I mean, these ideas circulate in the Mediterranean, and I might also add that Roger II married one of the daughters of Alfonso VI. I don't know if this means there was a connection or not, but anyway, this idea circulated. And also Sicily is in the same situation as Spain in this period, but few people realize this. I mean, you know, modern political divisions influence them. See Italy as, you know, Italy, and Spain as Spain, but I think Sicily and Spain are very much connected also in this period and later period. So I think we might think in such terms. This kind of inclusion, that's what I call it, inclusion of all the communities living in the kingdom. But inclusion apart, the kingdom is Christian. That leaves no doubt. You can see the beautiful mantle. Okay. Yaniv.
I just wanted you to clarify, the tombstone is in the church, but the human remains themselves are where?
We have no idea, because what we have left is the tombstone.
Not in the church.
Right now the church doesn't exist anymore. Right. So what they found is the tombstone, and now it is in a museum. We know nothing about, I mean, according to the inscription, they transferred the remains from one place to another, and the tombstone was put on top of the remains of Lady Anna.
So we would have to assume then that the initial burial of Anna and the
cathedral,
and the creation of the tombstone was intended to be placed somewhere outside the church complex, right?
No, because it tells you exactly what he did. I mean, the tombstone was erected after the whole thing, after the process, okay? First she was buried in the cathedral, and then she was transferred to the chapel in the church. And the tombstone was inscribed after the whole thing was done,
okay, so that's
when she was already placed there.
But the second question is, though, if this was intended for a mixed audience, it seems like a very strange message, though, right?
I agree, but I cannot.
There's no content really for anyone who's coming from outside the religion to embrace.
I don't see why.
The procedure of her internment, which really is.
Yes, but there can be several explanations for this. One explanation is, as I said, the audience. If among the audience of the people who come to this church there are converts from Judaism and Islam, they might look at the tombstone and understand about the role of Saint Anna in Christianity and so on, the instruction part. Now, the other part of the question, it might be that there were many such inscriptions, and maybe tombstones, maybe church inscriptions, and so on, and only these survived. Mm-hmm. You know, it's always this kind of answer, because we know, as I said, you saw the Psalter, okay, in 3 languages, not in Hebrew, it's true, but 3 languages. So this idea of writing things in several languages is part of the ideology of the Norman kingdom. So it is possible that there were more inscriptions like this.
It seems also that
we
the
don't know.
object itself is a message, no? So this is a beautiful tombstone. This is where you might end up if you Our religion, so the inscriptions are only part of the message.
Well, if you belong to the nobility, I don't think that anyone could afford, an ordinary person could afford such a tombstone. Clearly, this priest was part of the king's court, and he was very highly placed, and so on. That's, yeah.
So, Dennis, and Peter.
Yeah, my question goes also into that direction. Where was exactly the position of the grave and the tombstone? Well, I imagine something like that. The grave was like the burial place was under the floor, and that the tombstone would be somewhere not on the floor but on the wall. And then, well, I would ask the question: was it could it be reached by anyone actually to read what is
I suppose so, but as I told you, as I told you all, we don't know, because no modern scholar saw the actual placement of the thing.
Yeah, sure.
So we don't know.
You have to walk by the baptismal font to get there.
But when you look at other similar examples of churches
Yes, I said.
in Palermo, you kind of get a sense of the architecture of the church, and you would know where the bodies are deposited, if at all. So that's
Yes, there are bodies, like in Cefalù Cathedral, for example, you have the bodies of the kings placed in the church.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see them very
And the
clearly.
tombstones are accessible and readable and legible from
Yes,
their-
but they are not trilingual.
regardless, but that's that is where, architecturally speaking, that's where they would be positioned.
Yes, you can see them very easily.
and also read.
Yes,
them.
Okay.
yes, but as I said, they're not as elaborate or anything.
Sure, but I mean, otherwise it would be an indicator that it's more about authority to establish authority on this multicultural.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, this is one of the accepted explanations, that it reflects the ideology or the authority of the multilingual culture of Sicily.
Sorry.
Yes. I was wondering if you could turn to Peter of Eboli's, the depiction of Palermo.
Yes, of course. No. One minute. It's my technical weakness. Just a second. So,
This one?
Yeah, start with this one. Yeah.
Oh, the one of Palermo. So that is the
This one?
court. No,
No.
This one?
No.
This one is also of Palermo.
But the
Okay.
court, yes.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Did you note that the Jews? You said that it's in the the Albergaria quarter. So that's actually where the church is located. That's actually the site of what is
No,
now
no.
Casa Professa.
Yes, the church was located.
Yes, in that
Yes, but
quarter.
it has nothing to do with this illustration.
No, I know, but it's interesting too, the sort of division along ethnic lines, right? But what I wanted to ask
That's
was,
what Pietro de Eboli shows you, the division according to
Yes.
ethnic communities in Palermo. Yes.
right, and according to also different quarters of Palermo.
Yes. Yes.
So my question is
I agree.
also that, in a way, this is also a post-Norman image, right? Because Peter of Eboli is a Hohenstaufen.
Yes, that's
or
true, but
propaganda.
it's very close to the Norman period, and it still reflects the multicultural ideal, as he says, Urbs Felix, etc.
Right, but we do know that, for instance, there were actually pogroms or against Muslims in the 1160s and so on. So the question is this not also in many ways in sort of an idealized image?
Yes, of course it is. Of course it is.
It's not precisely.
Of course, I agree. It is an idealized
Right.
image, and I said it is a bit post the good period, and that's
Right.
why he mourns King William's passing and so on. But I think at some point, I mean, in the early 13th century, Frederick II still wanted to continue this idea, this policy,
Right.
and it didn't work out for all sorts of reasons. But at that time, I think he still wanted to show that he supports this kind of ideal. It doesn't mean that they really lived so nicely together.
Right.
But we don't know of any pogroms against the Jews. We know about internal wars against the Muslims. And of course the Muslim rebellion in the time of Frederick II that ended with their expulsion. That we know, of course. So this in a way is an ideal that you might say is an ideal, but it doesn't really reflect the tumultuous existence.
I would like to put together all the things known, not the unknowns. And
Okay.
I like the idea, the concept is that this is a very interesting mother-son relation, and she is buried by the rank of her son in the cathedral, but he brings her over to, according also to Greek rite, to another church.
Yes.
So maybe the tombstone is simply a speech act for Christians. We have all cultures at our hands. To make an inscription in another language, like the use of Hebrew in the churches at all, it shows we are also in charge of the Bible, of the Hebrew Bible. So
Yes, but in that case, it would have been written in Hebrew.
okay, but again, there might be an image of the Hebrew, and the image of the Hebrew might be done by the Hebrews, by the Jews, and the Jews of the community are speaking Jewish Arabic. So what comes close to the idea that the question of ideology, that this is ideology for the Christian to show here we are Greek and Latins together, and I think this comes very clear from all.
Yes, this is agreed
we
by.
are one Christianity, even different languages and different rites. But on the other hand, we are also in charge for those who are the Jewish minority and
The Muslim.
in there
And the Muslim
in
minority.
the Jewish and to the Muslim minority. So I think it could be not be for making souls, speaking to non-Christians, but speaking especially to Christians and say, okay, this is an artifact of unity, of Christian ruling in Sicily. So this would be very close to the court. But on the other hand, why to bring the mother from the cathedral to a chapel in another church? The cathedral should be the better place if there would be no small differences between Greek and Latin church and so on and so on. So again, to give the idea in this tombstone for Christians that here comes everything together in this Christian act. So I think this is I'm trying to read what's known, not what is.
Of course, what's known. No, I agree. We should judge by what is known, and not by what is not known. But I try to place it in a context, and this context uses multilingual writings, inscriptions, coins, etc., in all kinds of contexts. Okay, it is used in coins, it is used in textiles, it is used in psalters, and so on.
But again, the psalter is Greek, as you said, Greek translated to Arabic. And a Latin version in the middle. Again, it shows that the psalter is a Christian book.
Yes.
And Arabic.
Maybe, yes, but maybe it is intended for Muslim converts to Christianity, and we know that such people existed in Sicily.
Or Christian readers of Arabic.
Or Christian readers of Arabic. But thing is that the Greeks, I mean, who were the other Christians in Sicily? They were Greeks. And the Greeks, it's true that they spoke Arabic. They also served as interpreters and courtiers, administrators and so on, but they also knew Greek. So there was no reason to write in Arabic for them. On the other hand, we know about Muslims who converted to Christianity. We know this from Ibn Jubayr's description, and that they existed. We know this from the story of the palace eunuchs and other courtiers who were of Arabic origins. And they were not Arabic Muslim. I have to be very careful because none of them were Arabs. All of them came from North Africa. I mean, if they have had any origin that we can refer to, ethnic origin, they were Berbers in most cases. So, yes. Yes?
Wait.
I think that the key issue is the different system of the calendar. Is it so hard for a convert to learn the new system of the religion that he converted to? I think that it's not so hard. So why there is the four different systems?
I don't know, but you have also the Greek,
But
and the
it
Greeks
may be-
Greeks are
may-
Christian.
Yeah, but it may be a clue that it doesn't actually aim to only to Christian only. It's actually aimed to all different communities of different religions. Otherwise, I don't see the logic of using four systems.
Yes, I know. I'm sure that it was intended to be read by people who spoke Arabic and Judeo-Arabic. If these people were converts or not, that is another
That's
question.
for sure, but it's a question of their religious identity. And actually using different systems, it does show that they are belonging to different communities.
Yes. Yes.
Can I dovetail on this for a moment? Ehud was referring to the dating system. What struck me were two small issues, also to do with the exact phrasing. One is the number of amen. In two
You think
different
it's significant?
I think it is. I'll tell you why I think it is significant.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Rami walked out, but Rami wrote extensively about the involvement of the tomb inscriptions with the words amen in the Hebrew system known in Northern Europe, where it evolves from one amen to three amens, and he showed the significance of the Hechalot literature as formulating part of this triad. Okay, so I do think that there may be a significance to the number of amens recited in each and every one of the inscriptions. The other thing that I think is relevant,
But you have three amens in the Arabic inscription.
yes, I realize that. 3 amens in the Arabic inscription, 2 amens in the Greek, right? And another thing that I think is of significance is something that Ora was kind of alluding to, the Marian context. There is a very, as you said, there's a thick description of Anna's passing that has to do with her dying peacefully in her bed, which of course may be the reality, but of course also may be kind of resonating the cult of the Virgin Mary and the Domicile, and so we're talking about
the problem is that the peaceful is mentioned only in the Greek inscription.
I agree, and I think that is also something that has to do with what Peter was referring to, that this may be an inner Christian dialogue much more than a dialogue towards other communities.
Yes, Dennis? Chaim? No.
Yeah.
Chaim.
First. No, you didn't get a chance.
For
Go ahead.
the dating. I mean, in Arabic texts we have all sorts of dating systems, and so the Hijri date is not only associated or necessarily associated with the Muslims, because we also know that Christians use the Hijri calendar. So that's why I think alone from the calendar, it's hard to tell that it actually refers to a Muslim audience.
Okay.
So I actually, Peter more or less took what I was going to. No, it's fine. I will just add to it. I think, if I remember correctly, there's another very famous tombstone, which is trilingual, not quadrilingual, and it's one of the kings, and I can't remember which king. Is it Roger II, or is it?
No, it's Roger II.
Roger II's,
Yes.
And I think what's missing there is the Judeo-Arabic.
Yes,
Right? And the other,
right.
you have the.
And it's much shorter.
Yeah, and it's much shorter, but you have the trilingual, and of course it's placed. It's in the church. Now, I know that when I go into a church, okay, or when anyone or going to a building or whatever, you immediately look, or your eye focuses on something that's recognizable to you, right? Something that you see. So if I go into a church and I see some Hebrew, right, the first thing my eye immediately is drawn to the
Hebrew,
right? The Hebrew, right? Even if it's totally uninteresting and not really inspiring, or whatever, but you see the lettering, you say, you look at the and so. In a sense, I think I'm going along with you. I think here we have a clear example of cultural hegemony, where the Christians are saying we control this territory. We can have a tombstone in 4 languages, but it's clear who's in.
Yes, but why do it in the 4 languages?
No, you do it in the 4 languages because you show that you actually you control
have experts in your scripture.
Everyone, and when you look at the architecture, look at the, you know much better than I do, right? You go into the architecture, and you go into the most beautiful churches in
Monreale. It's I think one of the most beautiful churches in the world.
Right? And of course, it's full of Islamic
and
Byzantine, right?
Motifs, yes.
Right, but that means again, it's okay.
Appropriation.
But we, who's in charge here? Right? We're in charge here.
Of
right?
course.
Look around and you see. Right? So my question is more to the sense that do we know anything about whether the churches were used beyond prayer, right? Whether they were used for meetings, right? For royal processions or something that would have gone through the church. So even if you are Muslim or Jew or Greek or whatever,
they were certainly used for royal processions. We know that the Cappella Palatina was attended by all the courtiers. We also hear here that there was a procession which brought the remains of Anna from one church to another, so it was probably a very public occasion. And we know from Ibn Jubayr's description that also Muslims entered churches on certain occasions without converting. He remains a Muslim, and also his companions are still Muslims. He remarks on the dress of the ladies and the women. It's a bit unclear if these women were former Muslims or if they are just plain Latin Christians that dress like Muslims. But in any case, he describes the entrance of Muslims into the church.
And again, I'm going back also to the Psalter and
yes.
the Arabic. I mean, it could very well be. I mean, looking forward a bit beyond to the 13th century, but we know that, for example, when the Dominicans learned Arabic,
yes,
they learned Arabic. It seems, anyhow. At least I think a good claim can be made. They made not so much for converting Muslims to Christianity, but more to be able to give sermons and speak to Christian communities, Arabic-speaking Christian communities are living in.
Yes, but we are here a lot of time before the time of the order, Dominican order,
yeah, I know,
in the 12th century.
I was looking forward, but again, so it could be the reality here. It says that there are Christians who are Arabic reading more than they are Greek and Latin, and therefore you have the Psalter in the three languages, and the two also reflects that.
Yeah, it's possible. I saw it more like something that is a bit similar to Spain, where the ruler can say, "I rule all three religions," but of course I'm Christian, Catholic.
Just a comment. Roger II was the one that ordered the map from Alirisi.
Yes.
So that also adds to the concept of politics being the main issue here. Having a map and having four languages and many ethnicities and many.
It's a pity the map was not preserved. Moshe?
Yes, thank you. So a note and then a question.
Yes.
So a note you said about the Greek, the word that it's not sure if it's litanies or procession. So at least in the Judeo-Arabic it says Bilsalah, with prayers. And of course, if they move it with prayers, there is also a procession. So
yeah, so that's
can help
yes.
the scholar solve this problem. And then a question. Well,
you can't divide Litania and
yeah. So this is just.
Yes, it's more or less the same idea. I agree.
Yeah. So maybe there's no a discussion, or shouldn't be. And then the question you said before about the change of a mosque, of the great mosque in Palermo to a church.
Yes.
To cathedral. So
that happened long before Roger II.
Yeah, but could it be that church?
Yes. No, not the St. Michael Church.
St. Michael, but
the original.
The original, yes.
The original where she was.
Yes, yes.
So, because in the Arabic and the Arabic they call it the Jami al-Adam.
I know, yes.
So I thought maybe it's just Jami, it's the congregational building, not necessarily the mosque. But if not, it means that 70, 80 years after changing it to a cathedral, at least in the Judeo-Arabic and the Arabic inscription, you still call it the Great Mosque.
It could be, it could be. You might be right in this, because we know they did it shortly after the conquest. Mm-hmm. They destroyed the mosque and built a cathedral instead of it.
Think of the city we live in. right? Jerusalem has all these sites that people refer to, right? I know, but still, sites that are referred to as the place that used to be that and that. People,
yes, but here, and especially
so 80 years later,
especially if it's a political message, okay, we are in hegemony, so we are in hegemony, but the person who writes it, 8 years after the conversion of space,
yes,
calls it, I mean, it's subversive to call it a mosque.
Well, it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, but if your purpose is political,
yes,
it eats into your purpose, no?
Not necessarily, unless you want to appropriate.
No, you say it used to be a mosque, but now it is a church.
Okay.
So if you're standing in the church and you're reading, this is the place of the mosque, so it may be also,
No, it is not the same. It is not the place you are standing in. It's the first church,
where
okay?
it used to be.
Yes.
So it's either like a very objective, will give you all the entire information, or subversive. Yes, the king or the priest of the king wanted me to write in Judeo-Arabic for a political message, but we read Judeo-Arabic, we know what's this.
Well, that's if the priest and the other people didn't know Judeo-Arabic and Arabic. that's a question.
Well, the cathedral in Cordoba is still referred to as Mezquita.
I must add something, Dennis, that in Sicily also the synagogue was called Mezquita.
Because it's not.
And it is not a church. I mean, this term was applied to a place of religious meeting, and the mezquita is also the synagogue. It appears, this term survives to the 15th century.
No, but the cathedral in Cordoba was a mosque before.
I know, but I mean, in Sicilian dialect, it's very interesting that this term survives as a place of worship, and it applies to Jews just as it applied formerly to Muslims.
So it becomes neutral in a way.
It could be, yes.
And it is like a temple.
It's colloquial.
It's either that, or maybe the Jews called it, although they called it also kanisa. In Hebrew and Judeo-Arabic inscriptions, it appears as kanisa.
But kanisa is also a synagogue.
I know.
It's not also, it's a synagogue.
No, I said in Hebrew and Jewish Arabic inscriptions from Sicily that have survived to this day, it's called kanisa.
What is called kanisa?
The synagogue.
Okay.
But in Latin, in Sicilian Latin documents, it is often mentioned as mezquita.
I'm coming back to the issue of the subject of the
dating.
So the starting point of the Latin calendar is not the beginning of Christianity, the birth of Jesus. The starting point of the Hijri Muslim calendar is, let's say, the beginning of Islam. While both the Greek calendar and the Jewish calendar, the starting point is the creation of the world.
Right.
So we have here the Jewish inscription, the Arabic inscription claim that the world starts 4,908 years ago, while the Greek
6,000. Yes, they have.
It started 6,676,
yes.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we can ask ourselves, why to actually include in this tombstone two different, actually conflicting information about the starting point of the world?
It's an interesting question, but I think what they wanted to represent is how each community calculates the date.
So that's what I say, that it's very hard. It's very hard to think about those conflicting informations, that it's actually aimed to one Christian community, which include converts. You try to confuse us here? Why you try to confuse us?
No.
When the war started?
They're not French, they're not Russian. So they can live in different calendars in one town.
No, you cannot live in different calendar. You cannot live in different calendars.
Why not?
Absolutely not.
We do.
But
If you're one community, you need one calendar.
no, you don't. You don't. Moshe can explain to you how in the Gniza you have the according to the Shtarot. How it's in. I forgot in English. Seleucid calendar and the creation of the world and the Hijrah, and you have all of them.
This piece of information, when the world started, is very important.
I agree, but they had no problem with this.
Yes, Ahu.
I just want that. It's important, but it's very neutral because I'm thinking of other options. So to come to Yetziat Mitzrayim or to come to the cycle of the Messiah coming, that's controversial, and it has it can also be looked at in a different way. When the world was created, there's something very universal. It's even before religions were made. So I think it's something that everyone could understand or relate to, even if you don't understand it, maybe. But in the ideal, it's not putting in words that may have another meaning for Jews when they read them.
No, that's true. No, but no, what Ehud was saying is that why you have two different dates for the creation of the world,
yes,
and that they are conflicting.
Could you throw in Hebrew? It would be a much bigger problem if you would have used another date now.
What about Greek though? Are there any other pieces of evidence for Greek inscriptions that are dating according to the creation?
There are lots of Greek inscriptions in Sicily, but I don't remember how they are dated. I need to check this. I think Axel wanted to ask something.
And then Dennis
we know something about the relationship of the mother king with the different kind of communities.
Yes, as I said, there were Arabic-speaking administrators and Greek-speaking administrators at the court, and they held very high functions. Some of them, but this is going to, I don't know, problematic relationships. You can look at it from the point of view of inclusion and tolerance, and also for manifestations of intolerance, like the story of the eunuch Philippos, who was admiral of the fleet of Roger II, and then was executed for heresy and he was a Muslim converted to Christianity. He was accused of reverting to Islam, and the story is very strange because it says that he provided oil for the synagogues of the devil, and I really wondered about this term. I mean, do they refer to mosques as synagogues of the devil? Do they refer to any kind of place of worship that was not Christian as a synagogue? It's a very complicated thing. In any case, this guy was executed and burned and had a very unpleasant end. But
maybe it's a gift from the community.
I don't know, but the thing is that he served in the capacity of a very high official at court, and then he fell from grace, and that's what happened to him. But we know of many administrators that were Arabic speaking, and I showed you before that the notaries, where are they? No.
Escape. Press escape.
Okay, I'm very bad at technical things. I wanted to show you the notaries. No, it's
notaries.
Yeah, it's this one. Yeah, this one. You can see it represents people who worked at court, who had official capacity, and you have all three major communities. And we know that although they are not represented here, that also the Jews had their own notaries, which are allowed to function as official notaries of the Jewish community up to the expulsion, because many of the traditions established in the Norman Kingdom continued and were not changed by later rulers. When there was no reason to change them, they didn't change them. So each community had its own notaries. As I said, the Jews continued to pay jizya up until the expulsion, and so on.
Jizya?
Yes, they called it jizya. Yes, in Latin documents you have the word jizya. So, I mean, many things were continued for traditional reasons and for maybe they had no wish to change things. But as you can see, there are administrators from all the communities. The only thing that we know, or at least we think we know, is this claim that Roger II, towards the end of his rule, attempted to convert Jews and Muslims. It doesn't say that he forced them to convert, that he gave them gifts, like material advantages to convert. That's all we know, and we even don't know if this statement was really true, I mean, for George's period, or is some anachronistic claim to make Roger look more Christian, or I don't know, something like that.
If there are no further questions,
just one comment on the calendars. When it comes to at least Christian Arabic manuscripts, the dating, you see in colophons many different systems used. Not only like referring to the birth of Christ, but also is the Seleucid calendar, for example, that also starts
Geniza and documents and
starts with the creation of the world, and even the Italy calendar is integrated in one colophon. So we have like 3-4 different systems used in one colophon to date a manuscript.
Also, Al-Biruni's book trying to find a way to accommodate all the calendars.
I think people had, that's just my personal comment, I think people had much less problems with inconsistencies than we have. That's part of the mentality of the Middle Ages. If you look at a manuscript from, I don't know, never mind which country and which century the Middle Ages, you will see a lot of variations in the name of a place or the name of a person in the same document, and it doesn't bother anyone. And you have to understand why here it is written with a C and there with an S and there with a Z and so on and so forth. So maybe that's one of the answers.
Also, can I add one more thing? Talk about calendars and different calendars and systems. So Ovadia the proselyte was Norman and wrote more or less
in the same
period.
Right.
So he dates his prayer book according to 2 different Jewish calendars, and when in another section of his autobiography, when he writes about the moon eclipse that he saw, so he says as the verse says, and he quotes a verse from Joel. But
yes, and very famous. Yes.
And the Latin is actually a combination of the verse from Joel and its recitation in the Acts of the
Apostles.
Okay, so he mixes everything together, and this is the proof for him becoming a Jew. So it doesn't matter to him. Yeah, he can cite the proof from the Latin Bible that he remembers.
But he's a convert.
I think we can all thank Nadia.